Mr. President, I rise today to continue my tribute to Nebraska's heroes, the current generation of men and women who lost their lives defending our freedom in Iraq and Afghanistan. Each of these Nebraskans has a special story to tell. Today, I will recall the life and service of Sergeant Lonnie Calvin Allen, Jr., a native of Bellevue, Nebraska. Calvin grew up in a military family. His father, Lonnie Allen Sr., was a senior master sergeant in the Air Force. When Lonnie Sr. was assigned to Offutt Air Force Base in Bellevue, both he and his wife, Sally, thought they would only be there for a short time. However, they enjoyed the good life, and soon after the birth of their two sons, Nehru and Calvin, they decided to stay. As a young child, Calvin spent much of his time in the kitchen. His mother still talks about how Calvin learned to cook at the age of 5. Sally has vivid memories of Calvin in the kitchen in the early mornings or on the weekends, experimenting with new recipes or dishes. There were times when she would still be in bed, and Calvin would bring her food or a new dish to try. She said that he was always open to trying new things, whether it was in the kitchen or elsewhere. This also pertained to sports, where Calvin played basketball and football, ran track, and wrestled. Calvin also had a caring attitude, which extended to church on Sundays. Calvin was widely known amongst the congregation at Mount Carmel Baptist Church in Bellevue. He often volunteered to be an usher and displayed his musical talent in the choir. Calvin had a personal and very open relationship with God, and he happily shared it with everyone he met. Throughout his high school years at Bellevue East, Calvin spent much of his time with friends and family. Sally recalled many video game parties and sleepovers at their house, which would end with many of Calvin's friends sprawled out on the Allen living room floor. Calvin was a member of a close-knit family who spent time playing games together. Whether it was card games or board games, the competitive spirit would always come out in the Allen boys. They loved to compete. After graduating from Bellevue East in 1998, Calvin enrolled at Northeastern Junior College in Sterling, Colorado, to study criminal justice. He had long envisioned a career in law enforcement and thought this would be a good starting point for him to launch his career. After completing 2 years at Northeastern, Calvin enrolled at Colorado State to finish his criminal justice degree. Soon after enrolling at Colorado State, however, he returned home to Bellevue. Calvin's vehicle had been involved in a wreck, which left him without any means of transportation. Due to this, he enlisted in the Army as a way to pay for a new vehicle, while also pursuing his law enforcement career while serving his country. Sally still laughs about the fact Calvin returned to Nebraska due to a wrecked car. Although many expected he'd follow in his dad's footsteps by enlisting in the Air Force, Sally knew better. Calvin wanted to pave his own road in the Army. Following his enlistment, Calvin soon shipped off to Fort Benning to complete his one-station unit training for the infantry. Shortly after graduation, he was assigned to a station in Germany. It was in Germany where Calvin met his wife, Bridget, a German native. After dating for some time, Calvin was assigned to Fort Drum in New York as part of the 2nd Battalion, 22nd Infantry, 1st Brigade Combat Team, 10th Mountain Division. Bridget came with him to New York, where they wed in 2004. Shortly after their marriage, Calvin served in Iraq for the first time, and Bridget moved to Bellevue to be closer to Calvin's family while he was deployed. After a brief stint at home, he deployed to Iraq for a second time. In August of 2005, Calvin was stationed near Baghdad. During Sergeant Allen's second deployment, patrols became increasingly dangerous. At the time, the Baghdad area experienced a large increase in suicide bombings and sectarian fighting. On May 18, 2006, while on patrol in Baghdad, Sergeant Allen's Humvee was struck by an improvised explosive device, killing him and 3 other service members. Sergeant Allen's memorial service was held at the Cape Heart Chapel in Bellevue. Over 500 people attended the standing room only ceremony to pay their respects, including over 200 Patriot riders who lined up with American flags. Calvin was laid to rest on May 30th, 2006, in Arlington National Cemetery the day after Memorial Day. Fellow friend and Air Force Captain Bill Eckley talked about how Calvin was a man of honor. Bellevue also honored him by naming a street after him, and his high school established the Sergeant Lonnie Calvin Allen Jr. Scholarship. Sergeant Lonnie Calvin Allen Jr. received the Bronze Star and Purple Heart posthumously. I join Nebraskans and Americans across our country in saluting his willingness and his family's sacrifice to keep us free. I am honored to tell his story. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.